Georgia for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first, I'd like to acknowledge our colleague, Mr. Lynch, for his hard-fought campaign. And I'd like to, at the same time, spend a little bit of my time today working with Mr. Dickerson and Mr. Burton. First, Mr. Dickerson, I want to congratulate you and EPIC for all that you've accomplished. I worked with both Paul and Zoe at the White House and the President's first term, and commend you all for your work. Mr. Burton, if you could, I was reading through your testimony, I would love for you just to walk this committee through the history of impoundment and rescissions, I should say. It started, as I understand, in Thomas Jefferson's administration. Would love for you to walk us through the history.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow patriots, I'm fired up today because what we just saw in this congressional hearing is exactly what we've been warning about for years. Massive government waste, no accountability, and billions, no trillions of your hard-earned taxpayer dollars going down the drain while corrupt bureaucrats look the other way. Welcome back to the channel. If you believe in small government, fiscal responsibility, and restoring power to we the people, then make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with every American who's sick of watching their country bleed.
Through the history.
The earliest impoundment that I know of was by Thomas Jefferson. The Congress appropriated money to build some gunboats. Peace broke out, and he chose not to build the gunboats. So he, in effect, impounded the money and sent it back to Congress. That's been going on for a very long time. In older appropriations bills, particularly in the 19th century, generally read not to exceed X dollars. So presidents often didn't because they didn't think you needed to spend that much money. And President Roosevelt impounded money, and so did President Nixon. And at that point, there was serious objection by the Congress, and the Impoundment Control Act was enacted, which establishes an expedited procedure for rescissions, but it has very broad prohibitions on impoundment. There are certain reprogramming permitted and things of that sort. Obviously, if as with improper payments, if you can't spend the money, that's fine. The president should do that. So the rescissions process, however, is somewhat cumbersome, as you probably just discovered. It could be streamlined and made better, but nonetheless, that's the general requirement today.
And you know, one thing that stood out to me in your opening testimony and your testimony throughout this hearing is you mentioned the work that Speaker Gingrich and President Clinton undertook.
Yes.
So in your estimation, is our committee's work an extension of what was successfully done in the 90s to rein in spending?
Yes and no. I mean, the effort in the 90s was very broad. The Clinton administration was serious about improving government administration. They resisted some of what the Gingrich Congress wanted to do, but ultimately there were serious, very hard negotiations, and then they reached an agreement. President Clinton signed legislation that substantially reduced federal spending. And there was a tremendous amount of legislating going on throughout the Congress, not just in one committee, but committee by committee by committee by committee. There was a lot of legislating done, a lot of markups, a lot of investigations, a lot of hearings. It wasn't just one hearing like here. There was systematic throughout the Congress and in government in the executive branch.
Thank you. Mr. Dickerson, if we could spend a little bit of time in the remaining time we have left talking about improper payments. The first hearing our chairwoman convened was on the troublesome improper payments we discovered over the last 4 years of the Biden administration. Would love for you to touch on some of the challenges we face with respect to verifying identity, with respect to payments that are going out the door. Would love for you to comment on that.
Absolutely. Improper payments is a huge issue. In one program alone, Medicaid, for example, spent $1.1 trillion over the last decade on improper payments. And that is incredibly harmful because it's a waste of taxpayer money, but it's also funds that aren't going to people who are truly vulnerable and truly needy. And so this waste, fraud, and abuse is rampant throughout the federal government. And so one of the major sources of that is the lack of ability to identify the people who are claiming money and checks are going out the door to are actually eligible. For example, the Do Not Pay registry is supposed to be a database of accounts that the federal government's not supposed to write checks to. But in many cases, those checks go out the door and then they ping the registry. And in many cases, that registry doesn't have access to all the databases that it's supposed to. So it's a huge problem, and you really should be fixing it.
And I recall in our first hearing, we talked about the amount of payments going out the door that are still done by hand, not by computer or electronically. Is that something you all have uncovered in your work?
Yeah, I think it's something that we should be using new technology, using AI to actually look at what we have across the government to ensure that only people who are actually eligible for benefits are receiving it, nobody else.
Thank you. Madam Chair, in my closing, just a point of clarification. The poll behind you, behind our ranking member, it adds up to 110%. Just wanted to clarify, is it meant to add up to 110%, or is that an error?
Do you yield?
Yeah, I do.
This is from a Quinnipiac poll that was held 2 weeks ago, and this is the data that was provided. There's a wealth of information, including information about Donald Trump's falling poll numbers, so you should take a look. Thanks.
I yield back.
The gentleman yields, and it still adds up to 110%. That's a fake poll right there. I now recognize.
You heard it right there. Medicaid alone wasted $1.1 trillion, that's with a T, on improper payments over the last decade. That's not just a number, that's our money. That's your parents' Social Security, your kids' future, your roads, your schools, gone. Let me ask you something. If you ran a business and lost $1 trillion, would you still be in business? No, you'd be in prison. But when the government does it, they get a promotion. And what's their excuse? Oh, we didn't verify their identity. The database didn't work. We didn't know. No, Patriots, that's not incompetence anymore. That's corruption. And it starts at the top. They talk about the 1990s like it was some golden age of government efficiency. Sure, Clinton and Gingrich fought hard and cut spending. I'll give them credit where it's due. But you know what the difference was? Back then, both sides knew the American people weren't going to tolerate waste. There was pressure. There were real investigations. Committee after committee, not just some token hearing. Today, we get one hearing. One, and they pat themselves on the back like they're saving the republic. Meanwhile, the Biden administration, and let's call it what it is, has presided over the worst 4 years of financial recklessness in modern history. Fraud, waste, and abuse are not the exception, they're the policy. This Do Not Pay registry, it's supposed to stop checks from going out to scammers, dead people, or outright frauds. But they admit it often checks after the money is already gone. This isn't a flaw. This is a feature of a broken system that's lost its soul. And let's talk about identity verification. The federal government has facial recognition technology for border enforcement. They can read your license plate from space, but they can't figure out if someone collecting benefits is alive or even real. That's not a technology issue. That's a priorities issue. They don't want to fix it. But here's the good news, friends. There is a way out. First, we demand full audits of every single agency. No more blank checks. If you can't prove how the money was spent, you don't get another penny, period. Second, every payment needs to be verified in real time. AI? Sure, but don't let the deep state run it. We need private contractors, accountable to Congress, not woke bureaucrats. Third, we restore the spirit of the Impoundment Control Act. Presidents should be encouraged to block wasteful spending, not punished. Thomas Jefferson did it, Nixon did it, and frankly, Trump tried to do it, but the swamp fought back. And don't think I missed the cherry on top. They ended with a poll behind the committee showing numbers that added up to 110%. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. The math is fake, the polls are fake, the system is fake. Here's the bottom line. We either fix this now or we lose this country forever. We must elect patriots, not politicians. We must demand transparency, not tolerance for failure. And we must hold every dollar accountable, because if we don't, they'll spend us into oblivion. I want to know what you think. Is it time to completely overhaul how our government spends money? Should presidents have more power to block wasteful spending? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your voice loud, and your spirit strong. This is Your Name signing off. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.